It all starts with a phone call. Brenda, phone in hand, voice sharp and full of urgency, is on the line with the police. She's reporting her neighbor, Patricia. That's right. She's filing a formal complaint. Over what? Not a stolen car, not a break-in, but a garden. Or more precisely, what's growing in Patricia's yard. Now meet Marcus. He's Patricia's husband, retired, loves his quiet life, lives in a nice, calm neighborhood where everyone waves hello and keeps to themselves. His dream? Simple. He wants to grow vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, maybe some herbs. He spent years dreaming about this little garden, his own little piece of peace in the backyard, but things aren't going as planned. Enter Brenda. She lives right next door, always dressed to impress, full makeup, perfect hair, like she's heading to a dinner party, even at 8 a.m. And her lawn? Immaculate. Not a single weed, not a blade out of place. Green even, and smooth like a golf course. And she expects everyone else to follow the same rule. When she sees Patricia's yard, where Marcus is trying to grow food, she loses it. To her, it's not a garden, it's a mess. She calls it wild, unruly, an eyesore. In her eyes, those tomato plants, weeds, that little patch of green life? A violation of neighborhood standards. So she does what Brenda does best. She takes action. Fast. Direct. No hesitation. She picks up the phone and reports them. This isn't just about plants. It's about control. About rules. About what kind of neighborhood they're supposed to live in. One where everyone fits the same mold, or one where people can live a little differently? Marcus just wanted to grow some food. But now, because of Brenda's call, he's caught in a quiet war over soil, seeds, and who gets to decide what a proper yard should look like. And it all starts with one angry phone call, and a dream that's taking root in the most unexpected way. The morning sun shines gently over Patricia's front yard, where a patch of wildflowers blooms in soft purples and yellows. These aren't ordinary garden plants. They're native wildflowers, part of a local conservation effort to support pollinators like bees and butterflies. Patricia takes pride in her eco-friendly garden. She's done her research, followed city guidelines, and even reached out to environmental groups for advice. Everything she's planted is legal, sustainable, and meant to help the local ecosystem. But not everyone sees it that way. Brenda, a member of the Neighborhood Homeowners Association, walks up the driveway with a clipboard in hand. She's dressed neatly, her expression serious. Without much greeting, she informs Patricia that she's being fined $200 for violating community landscaping rules. The reason? Her wildflower garden. Patricia listens calmly. She's surprised but keeps her voice steady. She looks Brenda in the eye and asks a simple, direct question. Which rule did I break? Brenda hesitates. She flips through a few pages on her clipboard and points to a section in the community covenant. The wording is broad and unclear, something about maintaining uniform yard standards and avoiding unkempt appearances. But there's nothing specific about banning native plants or wildflowers. No mention of color, height, or plant type. Patricia doesn't argue. Instead, she invites Brenda inside to show her the documentation. She pulls out printed city guidelines that actually encourage residents to grow native species. She has emails from local environmental programs confirming that her garden meets all Green Initiative standards. She even has photos showing how the space has evolved, neat, well-maintained, and full of life. As Patricia presents her evidence, it becomes clear she hasn't broken any actual rule. The covenant Brenda is citing is vague, open to interpretation, and nowhere does it clearly state that native wildflowers are prohibited. In fact, the city's own sustainability plan promotes exactly what Patricia is doing, yet the fine still stands. For now. Brenda says the Homeowners Association will need to review the case, but the message is loud and clear. Even when you follow the rules, someone in power can still challenge you. This moment marks the beginning of a deeper issue. It's not just about flowers or lawn care. It's about control, fairness, and whose idea of beauty gets to decide what's allowed in a neighborhood. Patricia didn't set out to start a fight. She just wanted to do her part for the environment. But now she realizes this small garden might become the center of a much bigger conversation, and she's ready to stand her ground, not with anger, but with facts, patience, and quiet strength. Now let's take a closer look at what's really been going on, because Brenda's behavior didn't start yesterday. There's a clear pattern here, and it's been building for some time. If we go back and connect the dots, we can see that she's repeatedly targeted people who are already in tough situations. People who are more likely to back down, stay quiet, or just want to avoid conflict. Let's start with the veteran. Yes, a man who served our country came back, settled into his home, and tried to live a peaceful life. All he did was grow tomatoes in his front yard. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous. Just homegrown vegetables. But Brenda hit him with a $150 fine for tomatoes. Think about that. Not for a blocked sidewalk, not for unsafe construction, for growing food in his own yard. This wasn't about rules. This was about power. Then there's the single mom. She's working hard, raising her kids on her own, doing her best to make ends meet. One weekend, her kids drew some colorful chalk art on the driveway, the kind of thing kids love, parents smile at, and neighbors enjoy. It washes away with the next rain, harmless, sweet even. But Brenda showed up and slapped the family with a $300 fine. $300 for chalk on pavement. Imagine getting that notice in the mail. No warning, no conversation. Just a bill and a threat. And remember the widow? A woman who lost her husband, living alone, trying to keep her home and her memories intact. She put up a small bird bath in her garden, a peaceful little feature that brought birds calm and a bit of joy to her yard. Brenda fined her for that, too, said it violated some obscure rule about unapproved outdoor structures. A bird bath. Not a shed, not a pool, not even a grill. A bird bath. Again, this wasn't about safety or standards. It was about control. What do all these people have in common? They're vulnerable. They're not in a position to fight back easily. The veteran might not know all the bylaws. The single mom doesn't have time or money to hire a lawyer. The widow doesn't want drama or confrontation. Brenda knew that, and she used it. But it's not just the fines. There's another side to this, how she runs the community meetings, or rather, how she manipulates them. Brenda has been calling emergency meetings, but here's the catch. Most members don't even know about them until it's too late. No proper notice, no agenda shared in advance. Sometimes people find out after the meeting's already happened. How is that fair? How is that democratic? These aren't real emergencies. There's no fire, no flood, no urgent safety threat. These are staged events, called suddenly, held quickly, so she can push through decisions without scrutiny. She stacks the room with people who support her, rushes the vote, and then says, "Well, it was decided in a meeting." But it wasn't a fair process. It was a setup. And when people do show up, when someone finally says, "Wait a minute, I wasn't told about this," Brenda dismisses them. "You should have checked the calendar," she'll say, or "the notice was posted." But where? In a corner of a website no one checks? On a bulletin board in a building that's locked half the week? This isn't leadership. This is manipulation. And, let's be honest, if these fines were being handed out to people with power, with connections, with loud voices, do you think it would keep happening? Probably not. But Brenda picks her targets carefully. She goes after those who won't make a scene, who'll just pay the fine and move on, even if it hurts. That's not enforcement. That's abuse. And the worst part? She hides behind the rules, always pointing to some line in a handbook, some clause no one's ever heard of. But rules are supposed to protect people, not punish them. They're meant to create order, not fear. When rules are used to intimidate, to isolate, to silence, that's when they've gone too far. We've seen this pattern now over and over, targeting the vulnerable, using fake emergencies, avoiding transparency, and all of it wrapped in the language of procedure and compliance. But procedure without fairness isn't procedure. It's oppression, and compliance without. Choice isn't compliance. It's coercion. We need to ask ourselves, what kind of community do we want to be? One where people live in fear of unfair fines for growing tomatoes or drawing with chalk? One where meetings are used as tools to push agendas, not to hear voices? Or do we want to be a place where everyone is treated with respect? Where rules are applied evenly, fairly, and with common sense? Where people can speak up without worrying about being targeted? Because right now, under Brenda's actions, the balance has tipped. It's not about community anymore. It's about control. And that's not leadership. That's not service. That's not what any of us signed up for. So we need to look at this clearly. Not as isolated incidents, but as a pattern. A pattern of targeting the weak, avoiding accountability, and using power in ways that hurt, not help. And if we don't address it now, it won't stop with tomatoes, chalk, or bird baths. It'll keep going until someone finally says, "Enough." Patricia had finally had enough. After months of tension, constant rules, and what felt like personal attacks from Brenda, she decided it was time to take real action. She wasn't going to sit back and let things keep getting worse. So, she walked into her local government office and officially filed a formal complaint against the HOA, and specifically against Brenda, who was leading it. This wasn't just a quick email or a phone call. This was serious. Patricia filled out the proper forms, listed her concerns, and made it clear that she believed Brenda was misusing her power. She pointed out the unfair fines, the sudden rule changes that seemed to target her, and the way Brenda always seemed to be watching her house. Patricia wanted answers, and she wanted the authorities to look into what was really going on behind the scenes. But the moment Brenda found out about the complaint, she didn't back down. In fact, she doubled down. Brenda had always been strict about the neighborhood rules, but now she turned up the pressure. She started keeping a close eye on Patricia, not just casual glances across the street, but full-on surveillance. She began documenting everything. If Patricia left a trash can out a few minutes too long, Brenda snapped a photo. If a piece of mail blew onto the lawn, picture taken. If the garden needed a trim by just a day, Brenda was there with her phone, capturing it like evidence in a case. She treated every tiny detail like a major violation, and every photo went into a folder, a growing collection of proof that Patricia wasn't following the rules. Brenda wasn't just enforcing policies anymore. She was on a mission. It felt personal, and Patricia could feel it. But here's the thing. Patricia wasn't just defending herself. She was digging deeper. Instead of reacting to every little accusation, she decided to do her own investigation. She started talking to the neighbors, not in a gossipy way, but carefully, respectfully. She knocked on doors, asked questions, and listened. She wanted to know if others had noticed the same patterns she had. Were they also getting strange fines? Had they seen Brenda acting unusually controlling? At first, people were hesitant to talk. After all, Brenda was in charge. She ran meetings, sent out notices, and had a reputation for being tough. No one wanted to end up on her radar. But Patricia kept at it. She was calm, kind, and honest about why she was asking. Slowly, people started opening up, and what she heard was shocking. One neighbor mentioned that a new security gate had been installed last year, but no one had voted on it. Another said the HOA had paid a landscaping company that no one had ever heard of. A third remembered seeing Brenda's husband driving a fancy new SUV right after the HOA approved a big budget increase. Then, someone said something that made Patricia stop and think. "I saw the invoice," the neighbor said. "The company that got paid for the pool repairs? That's Brenda's cousin's business. And I think Brenda's husband is a partner in it." Patricia's mind started racing. She began asking more direct questions. Who approved the contracts? Where did the money go? Why were certain companies always getting the HOA jobs? The more she looked, the more inconsistencies she found. Then she got her hands on some financial records, not through anything sneaky, but through public HOA documents that members are legally allowed to see. She spent nights going over line after line of expenses, payments, and vendor contracts. And that's when she found it. Several large payments had been made to a company called Summit Property Solutions. On the surface, it sounded legit, maybe a maintenance or management firm. But when Patricia did a quick search, she discovered something strange. The business was registered to Brenda's husband, and Brenda herself was listed as a director. Even more suspicious? The services billed didn't match what the neighborhood actually received. For example, one invoice claimed $12,000 for exterior painting and siding repair on multiple homes, but none of the residents remembered any work being done. Another payment of $8,500 was for landscaping design and consultation, but the yards hadn't changed at all. It started to look less like a service contract and more like a way to funnel HOA money into a company controlled by Brenda and her family. Patricia couldn't believe it. Was Brenda using her position to profit from the very people she was supposed to serve? She gathered everything. The photos Brenda had taken of her, the list of fines, the neighbor statements, and the financial documents. She organized it all into a clear timeline. Dates, amounts, names, and sources. Nothing was exaggerated. Everything could be checked. Then she took it a step further. She contacted a local attorney who specialized in homeowner association laws. She explained the situation, showed the evidence, and asked what her options were. The lawyer listened carefully. After reviewing the documents, He said something that made Patricia's heart beat faster. "This goes beyond personal conflict," he said. "If what you're showing me is accurate, this could be a case of financial misconduct. HOA board members have a legal duty to act in the best interest of the community. They can't use their position to benefit themselves or their family. If funds were diverted to a company they control, that's a serious violation," he advised her to file a formal complaint with the state agency that oversees HOAs, not just about the harassment or the fines, but about the misuse of funds. That kind of accusation would trigger an official investigation. And if the evidence held up, Brenda could face real consequences. Patricia felt a mix of emotions: fear, anger, but also relief. She wasn't just reacting out of frustration anymore. She had facts. She had proof. And now she had legal support. She knew this wouldn't be easy. Brenda had power, influence, and a network of supporters in the neighborhood. Filing a formal complaint could make things worse before they got better. People might take sides. There could be backlash. But she also knew she couldn't stay silent. This wasn't just about her lawn or her trash cans. It was about fairness. It was about accountability. It was about making sure that no one else would be bullied or overcharged because someone in charge was using their role for personal gain. So, with a deep breath, Patricia submitted the complaint. She included every piece of evidence: the surveillance, photos Brenda had taken, the list of unapproved expenses, the neighbor testimonies, and the financial records showing payments to Brenda's family-linked company. She laid it all out clearly, fact by fact, date by date, and then she waited. But Brenda wasn't waiting. She found out about the complaint fast, probably through someone at the HOA office or a neighbor who saw Patricia at the attorney's office. And when she did, she didn't stay quiet. At the next HOA meeting, Brenda stood up and addressed the group. "There are some false and damaging claims being made," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "Someone is trying to undermine the board's work and spread rumors without proof. We follow the rules. We manage the budget responsibly. And we do what's best for this community." She didn't mention Patricia by name, but everyone knew who she meant. After the meeting, Patricia noticed even more changes. Her mailbox was tampered with. Not broken, but slightly ajar, like someone had checked it. A tree branch on her property, which had been fine for years, suddenly got a violation notice. And one morning, she found tire tracks in her driveway. Fresh, like someone had driven up in the middle of the night and then backed away. It felt like pressure, like a warning. But Patricia didn't back down. She kept recording everything, every fine, every odd occurrence, every suspicious comment. She saved emails, took screenshots, and wrote down dates and times. She knew that if this turned into a real legal case, details would matter. And then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. One of the neighbors who had been too scared to speak before came to her door. "I've been watching," the neighbor said quietly. "I saw Brenda go into the office after hours last week. I thought it was strange, so I made a note of the time. And I've seen her husband's truck parked near the storage shed where the financial files are kept." The neighbor handed Patricia a small notebook with dates and times written in neat handwriting. "She's hiding something," the neighbor said, "and I think you're the only one brave enough to do something about it." Patricia thanked them and closed the door slowly. She looked around her living room, at the stack of papers, the printed photos, the growing folder labeled evidence. She wasn't just fighting for her home anymore. She was fighting for the truth. And she wasn't going to stop until someone in power finally listened. Now we're getting to one of the most intense parts of the whole story. The public hearing. This is where everything starts to come to a head. All the tension, the power struggles, the hidden agendas, they all come out in the open right. Here, in front of a room full of people, Brenda shows up ready to fight. She's been preparing for this moment. She's got her statements written, her tone set, and she walks into the architectural review meeting like she owns the place. She's confident, almost defiant. To her, this is her chance to defend her property, her choices, and her reputation. She believes she's in the right. She's brought what she calls her expert, someone she thinks will back her up with technical knowledge and credibility. But then, Patricia walks in, and the moment she appears, the energy in the room shifts. Patricia isn't just showing up in casual clothes. No, she's wearing her judicial robes. That's not something you see every day at a neighborhood planning meeting. It's a bold move. And whether she planned it or not, it sends a message. A strong one. Seeing someone in official court attire in a local hearing immediately commands attention. It creates a sense of authority, of seriousness. It makes people sit up straighter. It makes Brenda pause, even if just for a second. You don't need to say a word to make an impact. Sometimes, the way you show up says it all. And Patricia? She just changed the entire tone of the room before she even opened her mouth. Now, let's talk about Brenda's so-called expert. She brings him forward, expecting him to lay out facts, challenge the rules, and prove that her modifications to her property are acceptable, maybe even reasonable. But things don't go the way she planned. The expert starts talking, but his arguments don't hold up. He stumbles. He contradicts himself. He can't answer basic questions about zoning codes or construction standards. He doesn't have the documents. He doesn't know the exact measurements. He's vague. He's unprepared. And just like that, his credibility starts to fall apart. People in the room start exchanging glances. Some are confused, others look almost amused. But most of all, they're noticing that Brenda's main support, the person she's relying on to prove her case, is failing her in real time. It's one thing to believe you're right. It's another thing entirely when the person you've brought to defend you can't back you up. Then Patricia steps forward, calm. Collected, in full control, she doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. She begins to lay out the facts, clear, documented, and undeniable. She starts showing evidence of what's actually happened at Brenda's property. First, the fence. It wasn't just a small backyard addition, it was built higher than the allowed limit. It's located in a restricted area. It blocks views and access in a way that violates community guidelines. There are permits missing. Inspections never happened. Then, the pond. It wasn't approved. It's too close to the property line. It affects drainage. It could create safety issues, especially for children or pets. There's no fencing around it, no warning signs. It's a liability. And finally, the hot tub. This one's interesting. It wasn't just placed on the deck. It was installed without proper electrical wiring checks. The structure underneath wasn't reinforced to handle the weight. That's a serious safety concern. If the deck gives way, someone could get badly hurt. Patricia doesn't just tell people these things. She shows them. Photos, survey reports. Code violation notices. Official documents with dates, signatures, and stamped approvals, or rather, the lack of them. Each piece of evidence is like another nail in the coffin of Brenda's argument, and as Patricia speaks, something starts to happen to Brenda. Her confidence begins to crack. At first, she tries to talk over the points. She says things like, "Everyone does it," or "It's just a hot tub," or "No one was hurt." But those aren't answers. They're excuses. And in a formal hearing, excuses don't carry weight. The more Patricia presents, the quieter Brenda gets. Her posture changes. She stops making eye contact. She fidgets with her papers. She looks around the room, maybe hoping for support, but she doesn't find it, because the facts are clear, and the rules are the rules. What's happening here isn't just about a fence or a pond or a hot tub. It's about accountability. It's about following the same standards that everyone else in the community is expected to follow. No one is above the rules, not even someone who thinks they are. And in this moment, Brenda's authority, the power she's been trying to project, the control she thought she had, it all starts to fall apart, right there. In front of her neighbors, the committee, and the people who make the decisions, her position collapses. Not because someone attacked her, not because of rumors or personal grudges, but because the evidence is too strong to ignore. Patricia didn't need to shout. She didn't need to insult or belittle. She just presented the truth, clearly, calmly, and completely, and the truth was enough. By the end of this part of the hearing, the room knows what's what. Brenda isn't the victim of unfair rules. She's someone who ignored the rules multiple times, in multiple ways, and expected to get away with it. And now, she's being held accountable. It's a turning point, not just in the meeting, but in the whole situation. Because now, the balance of power has shifted. Patricia, who showed up in her judicial robes, not to intimidate but to represent order, fairness, and due process, has taken control of the room. And Brenda, who came in like she was untouchable, is now sitting there, silent, realizing that maybe she wasn't as in control as she thought. This moment, between 25 and 32 Cas, is where the story pivots. It's not about drama, it's about process. It's about what happens when someone tries to bend the rules. And what happens when someone else makes sure the rules are followed. And it shows that authority isn't about how loud you are or how much you spend on your house. It's about integrity. It's about respect. And sometimes it's about showing up in the right clothes, not for show, but to remind everyone what this is really about: justice, fairness, and doing things the right way. So when the hearing moves on to the next item, the mood is different. People are paying closer attention. They see that actions have consequences. They see that expertise matters. They see that emotional appeals don't win when facts are on the other side. And they see that Patricia, calm, prepared and dressed in her judicial robes, wasn't trying to flex. She was there to do a job, and she did it well. Brenda may have thought this hearing was about defending her lifestyle, but it turned into something else entirely. It became a public demonstration of what happens when rules are ignored, and what happens when someone finally enforces them. And from this point forward, nothing will be the same. The committee now has the facts. The neighbors have seen the truth, and Brenda, she's left with nothing to say. Because when the evidence is this clear, there's no comeback, just silence and the slow, quiet collapse of everything she thought she had built. This is the moment the tide turns. This is the moment everything changes. The tension has been building for months, maybe even years, but right here, between the 32-minute and 40-minute mark, it all comes crashing down. What starts as a routine mandatory meeting turns into the biggest showdown the neighborhood has ever seen. And at the center of it all is Patricia, who finally decides she's had enough. It begins with a notice. Everyone gets it. A mandatory homeowners association, HOA meeting is being held. No one can skip it. Attendance is required. The message is clear. Brenda wants control. She's been running things her way for a long time now, and this meeting feels like another move to tighten her grip. But what she doesn't see coming is that tonight, the tables are about to turn. People start arriving. Frank, Sarah, James, Linda, and dozens of others from the community. There's a buzz in the air, not excitement, more like suspicion. Everyone's wondering what Brenda's going to pull this time. She's already hit them with surprise fees, late charges, and threats of liens on their homes. Now she's calling a mandatory meeting? That just feels like another power play. Brenda walks in late, as usual. She's dressed sharply, clipboard in hand, acting like she's in charge of a Fortune 500 company instead of a small neighborhood association. She takes the front, clears her throat, and starts talking about the $5,000 special assessment. That number, $5,000, hangs in the air like a storm cloud. She says the money is needed for infrastructure repairs, landscaping upgrades, and legal fees. She doesn't give details. She doesn't show receipts. She just expects everyone to pay up. And she says it's non-negotiable. If you don't pay, you could lose your home. That's how serious it is, she claims. But then, Patricia stands up. She doesn't yell. She doesn't wave her arms. She just stands, calm and steady, and says, "I need to say something." The room goes quiet. Patricia has always been quiet, thoughtful, the kind of person who listens more than she speaks. So when she finally talks, people pay attention. She says, "Before anyone writes a single check for that $5,000, there are some things you all need to know." And then she drops the bomb. The HOA, she says, was officially dissolved 18 months ago. Silence. People look around. Some laugh nervously, like they think it's a joke. But Patricia isn't smiling. She continues. The state records show it. The HOA no longer exists. It was never renewed. The paperwork expired. And because of that, every single fee they've collected since then, every late charge, every fine, every special assessment, is completely illegal. You could hear a pin drop. Frank is the first to react. He stands up and says, "Wait, you're telling me I paid $3,000 last year for something that wasn't even legal?" Sarah jumps in. "I got fined $500 for painting my front door without permission. And now you're saying that HOA didn't even exist when they fined me?" Voices start rising. People are angry, confused, betrayed. Patricia keeps going. She pulls out documents, copies of state filings, emails, legal notices. She lays them out on a table. She shows proof that the HOA lost its status more than a year and a half ago. No renewal, no application, nothing. Just silence. And then she hits them with the next part. Not only are the fees illegal, she says, but Brenda has been funneling money into her own private company. Payments labeled as management fees, administrative costs, and vendor contracts, they all go to a company she owns. She's been using HOA money, your money, to pay herself. The room erupts. Frank stands up again. So, you're telling me she's been charging us for fake services, and then pocketing the cash? Yes, Patricia says. That's exactly what's happening. People start shouting. Some are demanding answers. Others are pulling out their phones, taking pictures of the documents. A few are calling lawyers right then and there. Brenda tries to speak. She raises her hands, trying to calm everyone down. Now, hold on, she says. There's been a misunderstanding. The HOA is still active. We've just had some delays in paperwork, but no one's listening. Sarah cuts her off. Delays? Delays don't erase 18 months. You sent me a certified letter threatening a lien on my house. I almost refinanced my mortgage because of you. Another neighbor, James, says, I paid $2,000 for that so-called security upgrade last winter. What security? The cameras are still broken. One after another, people stand up. They share their stories, the illegal fines, the threats, the pressure, the sleepless nights worrying about losing their homes over made-up rules and fake fees, and all of it, every dollar, every penalty, every scare tactic, was based on an organization that legally doesn't exist. Patricia didn't do all this alone. She spent weeks digging. She filed public records requests. She talked to state officials. She studied bylaws, legal codes, and financial reports. She even reached out to a lawyer who confirmed everything. The HOA is dead, and anyone collecting money in its name is breaking the law. She didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence was undeniable. Now, standing in that room, she's not trying to attack anyone. She's not trying to cause chaos. She just wants the truth out. And she wants it out now, before anyone else gets hurt. Brenda tries to defend herself. She says the HOA is functioning in good faith. She claims the dissolution was just a technical oversight. She says she's been doing her best to keep the neighborhood running. But no one buys it, because if it were just an oversight, why didn't she tell anyone? Why keep charging fees? Why threaten people? Why hide the truth? And why, when the HOA was gone, did she suddenly start pushing for bigger and bigger payments, like the $5,000 special assessment? It doesn't add up. People start connecting the dots, the timing, the sudden increase in fees, the way she avoided meetings, the way she controlled the books, the lack of transparency. It all points to one thing. Brenda wasn't just mismanaging the HOA. She was using it. For 18 months, she kept the illusion alive. She acted like the HOA was real. She sent out bills, she collected money, she punished people who didn't pay, and all of it was built on a lie. And now, thanks to Patricia, the mask is off. The room is loud, emotional. Some people are crying. Others are furious. A few are already talking about suing. One man says he's calling the police. Brenda tries to leave. She grabs her bag, mutters something about needing air, and heads for the door. But people block her way. Where do you think you're going? Frank says. You don't get to walk out after everything you've done, Sarah adds. Brenda doesn't answer. She lowers her head, pushes through the crowd, and walks out fast. No one stops her physically, but everyone sees it. She's not the authority figure anymore. She's the one who's running, and she knows she's been caught. As the door closes behind her, the room stays charged. People are still talking, still processing what just happened, but one thing is clear. Nothing will ever be the same. The $5,000 special assessment? Dead. The fines? Invalid. The threats? meaningless, because the HOA doesn't exist. And Brenda? She may have been playing the part of the HOA president, but she was never the law. Now, the real work begins. People start asking questions. What happens to the money that was already collected? Can we get refunds? Who's going to fix the real problems in the neighborhood? And what about the people who were already forced to pay thousands under false pretenses? Patricia says she's already contacted a legal aid group. They're looking into filing a class action complaint. There's also talk of reporting Brenda to the state attorney general for fraud. This isn't just about money. It's about trust. It's about fairness. It's about holding someone accountable after they took advantage of a system meant to protect a community, and instead used it to line their own pockets. As the meeting winds down, people don't leave quietly. They gather in small groups, talking, sharing phone numbers, making plans. For the first time in a long time, they feel like a real neighborhood again, not because of rules or fees or fear, but because they stood up together, and they finally told the truth. This moment, between 32 and 40 won't go down in the history books, but for everyone in that room it's unforgettable, because it's the night the lie ended, the night Patricia spoke up, and the night Brenda ran. At this point in the story, Brenda decides to take one final stand. She files a federal lawsuit. This isn't a small move. She's going straight to the highest level she can think of, hoping the federal court will see things her way and finally give her the justice she believes she deserves. After everything that's happened, the eviction, the public exposure, the loss of her home, she's convinced that only a federal judge can set things right. But the outcome doesn't go her way. The lawsuit gets reviewed, arguments are made, and eventually the decision comes down. Brenda's case is dismissed. The court finds no grounds to move forward. It's a crushing blow. All that hope, all that effort, and now she's back at square one. Legally speaking, she's got nothing. The system didn't side with her. In fact, it shut the door completely. Still, Brenda isn't ready to back down, even after the loss. She shows up at the courthouse, not for a hearing, not for a meeting. She's there to protest. She stands outside, holding up a sign, speaking to anyone who'll listen. She says the system is broken, that she's been wronged, that the HOA targeted her unfairly. She believes she's the victim of a conspiracy, of corruption, of abuse of power. To her, this isn't just about a parking space or a fence. It's about civil rights, fairness, and being treated with dignity. Only the courthouse isn't a place for spontaneous protests, especially not when there's already a legal history tied to the person causing the scene. And that's when things take another sharp turn. As Brenda continues speaking, law enforcement steps in. Officers approach her, ask for identification, and run her name. That's when they discover something. There's an outstanding warrant for her arrest. It's not related to the protest itself. It's from earlier, connected to previous legal issues that were never fully resolved. She's taken into custody, right there on the courthouse steps. The image is striking. A woman who came to demand justice ends up being handcuffed and led away by police. The irony isn't lost on anyone watching. The moment becomes symbolic of how far Brenda has fallen. From HOA president to someone being arrested in front of a federal building. Once she's processed, the legal system gives her a choice. Fight the charges in a long, costly trial with no guarantee of winning, or enter a guilty plea and accept a deal that includes consequences but avoids prison time. Brenda chooses the plea. She officially admits guilt on 3 separate charges: theft, fraud, and filing a false police report. These aren't minor infractions. Theft means she took something that didn't belong to her. Fraud means she lied for personal gain, likely tied to financial benefits or avoiding penalties. And the false police report? That goes back to the time she claimed her mailbox was vandalized, when evidence later showed she may have damaged it herself to make a case against her neighbors. By pleading guilty, she avoids jail, but the penalties are still serious. The judge sentences her to 3 years of probation. That means for the next 3 years, she'll be under court supervision. She'll have to check in regularly, follow strict rules, and any slip-up could send her straight to prison. She's also ordered to pay full restitution. That means she has to repay every dollar that was lost or misused because of her actions. Whether it's money taken from the HOA, false claims made to insurance, or costs tied to investigations, she's on the hook for all of it. No exceptions, no delays. The court wants her to make things right, financially, and there's one. More consequence that hits close to home. She's permanently banned from holding any position in the HOA again. Not now, not in 5 years, not ever. After being president, after running meetings, after making decisions that affected dozens of neighbors, she's officially cut off. No more influence, no more authority, no more access. It's a complete removal from the world she once controlled. This moment marks the end of Brenda's chapter in the neighborhood power structure. Everything she built, her reputation, her influence, her sense of control, has unraveled. What started as a dispute over a parking spot spiraled into fraud, lies, public protests, and now a criminal record. People in the community watch this unfold with a mix of emotions. Some feel relief, others feel sadness. A few still believe she was treated unfairly. But most agree on one thing: the situation got way out of hand, and the choices Brenda made only made it worse. She had chances to walk away, to apologize, to fix things quietly. But instead she doubled down, lied, manipulated, escalated, and now the consequences are final. The legal process has run its course. There are no more appeals, no more lawsuits, no more drama in court. Just a record, a sentence, and a woman who lost everything trying to prove she was right. In the end, the system held firm. Rules were broken, evidence was reviewed, and accountability was served. Justice may not have come in the way Brenda wanted, but it came. All right, folks, let's bring this story home. This is the part where everything starts falling into place. The turning point, the moment when all the hard work, the late-night meetings, the phone calls, the petitions, it all pays off. First, things first, Frank becomes the new HOA president. That's right. The man who stood up when no one else would, who refused to back down even when the pressure was on, now leads the board. And this isn't just a title. It's a promise. A promise that things will be different from here on out. Sarah? She steps into the role of treasurer. And trust me, that's not just a detail. It's a game changer. With Sarah managing the finances, every dollar is accounted for. No more shady expenses, no more unexplained charges. Everything is transparent, open, and fair. That kind of honesty, that's what builds trust. And trust is the foundation of any strong community. Now here's something beautiful. The community garden finally gets built. Remember how that empty lot used to sit there just collecting dust and weeds? Now it's alive. full of color, full of life. Neighbors are planting tomatoes, herbs, sunflowers, you name it. Kids are learning how to grow food. Seniors are sharing gardening tips. People are meeting, talking, laughing. That patch of land, it's no longer just dirt. It's connection. It's community. And because the garden is such a hit, the neighborhood decides to go even bigger. They launch the first ever wildflower festival. Can you picture that? Rows of bright wildflowers blooming along the sidewalks, music playing, food, trucks lined up, families walking around, kids with face paint, dogs on leashes. It's not just a festival, it's a celebration. A celebration of what happens when people come together and decide to make their neighborhood better. But it's not just about flowers and fun. Real change is happening. The values of the HOA begin to shift. Instead of control and restrictions, the focus turns to fairness, communication, and respect. People start feeling heard. They start showing up to meetings, not because they have to, but because they want to. Because they know their voice matters. And guess what? When a neighborhood feels good, looks good, and runs well, property values go up. That's not just a nice side effect. It's proof that doing the right thing isn't just morally sound. It's smart. Homes are worth more. People are proud to live here, and new families are moving in, attracted by the sense of unity and care. Then comes the big one, the Thornfield Accountability Act. This isn't just some internal policy. This is real legislation, passed at the county level. It sets new rules for how HOAs must operate. Mandatory financial disclosures, term limits for board members, clearer grievance processes, and stronger protections for homeowners. It's named after our neighborhood Thornfield because we became the example. The proof that change is possible. This act doesn't just help us. It helps thousands of other families in surrounding communities. People who've been dealing with the same frustrations, lack of transparency, unfair fines, power imbalances, now have a model to follow. Our fight sparked a movement, and that's something to be proud of. So what's the takeaway from all of this? It's simple. Change starts with one person, one voice, one decision to speak up. You don't need a title. You don't need permission. You just need the courage to say, "This isn't right," and then do something about it. Frank didn't set out to become president. Sarah didn't plan to take on the treasurer role. They just saw a problem and refused to look away. And because of that, everything changed. If there's one message I want you to walk away with, it's this. Your story matters. Whether it's a battle with your HOA, a disagreement with a neighbor, or just a feeling that things could be better. Don't stay silent. Share it, talk about it, write it down, post it. Because when you speak up, you give someone else the courage to do the same. So here's my call to action. Drop your story in the comments. Tell us what's happening in your neighborhood. What are you facing? What changes do you want to see? You're not alone. And your experience could be the spark someone else needs. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications. And if this story resonated with you, give it a like. Because the more people who see this, the more communities can change. This isn't just about one neighborhood. It's about all of us. About standing up for fairness. About building places where people feel respected, included, and proud to live. We did it in Thornfield. And if we can do it, so can you. Thanks for watching. Stay strong. Stay involved. and keep fighting for what's right. We'll see you in the next one.